Hey, Scott Fresner here with the T-shirt report, and my good buddy Richard Greaves. I'm in sunny Arizona. You're not shoveling snow though now.
No, I was stacking wood about an hour ago.
You're in the wood pile.
Yes, but
I'm
today
looking for rain
very
today.
nice. Today's very nice and sunny and a brisk 35 degrees.
Now, I talked to you 4 or 5 days ago, and I thought you told me you were scraping ice off a window, off your car
Yes,
window.
that's true. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It still snows in Michigan.
Yeah, I know. Well, it may rain here. We haven't had rain in like 8 months, and there's predicting rain for the next 3 days.
Get your lawn chairs. You could sit on the patio.
I told you we're like turkeys that go outside, and when it's raining, they raise up and they drown. When it rains in Arizona, everybody goes out to their back patio or their patio, and they just stand in awe.
Now, Pepe Quaglia, name dropping. Pepe Quaglia had on his Instagram or his Facebook feed, he's walking down a path on cross country skis, and on the side of the road are 2 turkeys with their tails completely inflamed. Beautiful turkeys. They walk up to him, and what do I see yesterday while I'm driving home? I'm driving down the King Road, and there are 2 turkeys on the side of the road.
No way.
And I stop in the middle. It's a 4-lane, 2 each way, and nobody behind me. I stop to get out my camera and to another. They walk right up to the car.
That's so funny.
So then I'm stopping traffic. They're looking around. They look at the front of my car. They greeted my car, and then with so many people, one guy.
You have a picture? Did you get a picture?
I thought I had the movie camera on. I only got a grainy picture because I had salt on the side of my window.
Too bad. Well,
I got proof. I got a picture. You throw it underneath.
You'll toss it to me. I'll throw it up when I edit this thing. See, I'm in Arizona. We just have coyotes every day. I mean, every day now the coyotes go through 4 or 5, and the javelina go through, and don't see many rattlesnakes. But anyway, hey, this is our.
How many people have left now already?
I know they get who these little guys. This is the history we're talking. Hey, this is a new show for us. This is part of our T-shirt report, and we are doing the T-shirt screen printing history. We think there's enough old guys like us. I think there's actually some interesting history, whether it be who invented, the roller frame. Like, lots of you don't know who Don Newman was. And there's lots of people that Richard and I have known for years. We've known as some of these guys were young men when we were younger. And our plan for this show is to do every show. We'll pick a key player and do the history and have them tell about their history. You have kind of a list going, don't you? Now this is our wish list. No, these people don't know they're on our wish list.
No, we haven't discussed this with anyone. So this is in no particular order. This just happens to be the way I wrote them down. We got Jeff Baxter and Rick Fuqua. Baxter can tell us of his adventures in the East Coast, and Baxter and I lived together for a while. I was never in my apartment at the same time he was, but for I think a year and a half, we shared the apartment. That's when I traveled so much. Rick Fuqua, who's got his own company, RPM now. Lots of things for him to tell us about. Duke Dalton, my old mentor, along with Jeffrey Gittimer, the 2 men that made me who I am today, along with Mark Kudre, Tomasz Freshka, and Susan Vanel. Lots of history there. Don Newman, I'd love to get Rich Hoffman. We've already interviewed Rich Hoffman in Atlanta at the SGIA show. So who knows if he'll come out of his seclusion.
He claimed he was going to never look back. So we'll see.
Well, I'll tell him that I've got 8mm videos of me filming him in the basement of the old Glad Rags building where my office at MR used to be, in the garage there with the robot welder putting together the early manual printing presses. I could use that as blackmail. Your pal Dave Evans, who I met once, he can tell us about the EFI lawsuit and the birth of rips.
I don't.
Sorry, okay. I said too much.
Yeah, Dave is with Catlink, by the way.
Well, so then I'll mention Charlie Fassini. I've been friends with Charlie Fassini.
Yeah, no.
Okay, that means we're going to get him on. Maybe you won't be on. Jeff McHugh, who invented almost everything on an XY axis that's ever been done.
Direct to screen.
Yep, direct to screen. Terry Kaiserman, who's been my ink mentor for 35 years, taught me everything I know about ink. Bill Wayner, who I see all the time on Facebook. I don't think people really understand how huge a person Bill Wayner was, especially in the 80s and 90s. And he's the one who found and brought us Fred Clarke. What kind of a gift was that?
Color separator, who did all the original Seps for stuff.
Fred Clarke, the best. Another separator, Jeff Campos, who I know had very interesting equipment. He had a CMYK scanner, or did he have an RGB scanner? Yes, he had an RGB scanner, silly me, that was unique and different. A large flatbed RGB scanner was terrific. Matt Rohn, who we both know, who could tell us about the birth of DTG. You can tell us more about the birth of DTG, which you might do this afternoon as we talk.
But he was one of the first guys. And then we know that our friend Patrice Girard in France was probably the first. But
that would be cool.
Think of me as being the first. I wasn't the first. I mean, I certainly brought it to market and made it commercially acceptable, but I didn't invent it, obviously.
But we shouldn't only have old guys. We should get guys like Ryan Moore to come on and tell us how he created, went from skateboards to videos to who knows what, the giant that he is now. Ross Balfour, who I met in 1984 when I went to England first time, and he and I forgot the other guy's name. I was sitting in a country inn outside with sheep just over the ravine in an outdoor restaurant having lunch, where he answered all those questions that had been building up in my mind about screen making. I wonder if he actually remembers any of that. Barbara Montgomery, another, the editor, Deborah Sexton, Steve Ducilli. They can tell us about the growth, along with, again, Tomasz Freshkin, Susan Vela, editors for the magazines that we worked at. We can get Mark Buchanan, the guy who hired me at Printware magazine. Bill Windsor.
Look at Bill Windsor.
I never met him.
He started the ISS shows. He was the guy. He was the god.
So there's got to be stories there. Vern Packer would be a great guy.
The ISS show guys, yeah.
That stuff. The Vassilan, Antone's family, Mark father and son. But of course, we need Fanny. We need Fanny to tell the real stories.
If you like Vasex, which we love, they're really, if you look at the pioneers, I mean, really people that really made a mark.
The jacket printer they invented was
the printer that
I ever used, 1979.
Yeah, he had a patent on it.
The C series of coding machines, I would have sold my mother to the Arabs to have invented those. They're so simple. Why did it take us 30, 40, 50 years to make those? We should talk to the Lawson boys. We should talk to David and Ben. Ben and Dave. They're born into the business. I have to write that down. Ben and Dave. Okay. What about our hero, Michel Kaza? Michel Kaza. He's not much of a t-shirt printer, but I think we should get him on anyway. But it was the original founders of Vespa. I mean, really, back in the 60s. I mean, this guy has such history and good stories, and it would be good. Good storyteller. Yeah. Now we've got the people I worked with at Stretch Devices, Heather McLean, Jan Smith, my old second in command at Shadow Graphics, Wendy Painter. She's been out of the industry for a long time, but I'll bet you we can get Wendy to tell some embarrassing stories about me that will have me covering up my face. But yeah, we have enough shows for 2 years. We have enough shows for 2 years. Well, this is we'll do a show a week. So David Blake and Winnie Strickland. Winnie Strickland is a used equipment guy that I met when I worked with Clinton 2000, and he did surfboards. No, surfboards or skateboards. He did surf. He had a surf shop in Miami a million years ago, and little David Blake learned how to print decals, probably decals they made into surfboards. That's where David learned how to screen print. So we've got embarrassing blackmail stuff. We can get David to come on. David is the I forget what his real title is now, but he used to be the, everything outside of the USA, but he may be the total sales manager at M&R now with the things that are different. Chuck Knoll, Clinton 2000, the guy who knew more about the banking and the leasing end of equipment than anybody else that I've ever known. A very clever guy. He was the first guy, I think, that named his company. Was it Clinton2000.com? I mean, it was an internet name. And
No one was
Huh?
doing that then. He was one of the first guys to pick an internet name for his company.
Always been. And
He
also,
didn't have the first website. I think we had the first website, but he was the first to use that more in marketing than we did.
he's also the guy that created M&R International. I remember when I was in my office at M&R, and Chuck walks by my door. He came down to see me, and Chuck, what are you doing here? Because he was a precision man, probably had Len Herman's name tattooed on his shoulder somewhere. And what are you doing here? Does anybody know you're here? I could get you out through my side door here. He says, no, putting together a thing. And because of his contacts with Rutland, and he had such context in South America,
He did,
he was a great guy. We did a lot of international shows.
Yeah, it'd be a good interview. For those of you that don't know some of these names, that's the point of this show, is that you're going to hear names as we go along and do these shows that of people you had no idea who they were. You had no idea what effect they had on maybe your life as a screen printer and the industry. But these are names from the past, people that were influential. You know, I think that's the grand plan. How's your list? Are we good?
That's enough. I think that's enough.
That's a year's worth of shows.
Terry Kaiser, and I don't think we mentioned, or did we?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, okay. Terry. People don't know that he worked for Union, kind of as a contractor, and he was instrumental for the True Tone inks for Terry was the guy, but people wouldn't know who Terry was. I mean, he kind of moved on and did his, Anyway.
He hasn't been to a trade show in a long time.
No, it's been a long time.
Completely other things now.
Yeah. So the plan is to do a show every week or so. This is part one. And so I figured for part one, Greaves and I will talk about our background. I think people might be curious how Greaves and I got into business and how we met. And I think we have a little different story on how we met. Our memories are getting a little fadey, So anyway, you want to go first? I was born in a log cabin.
The family business is landscape architecture. And so I grew up in my grandfather's 40-acre nursery. So my father had a small house that he and my mother converted and made bigger and bigger and bigger. Every November, when the winter came, another addition seemed to be added onto the house, because it started out as probably a 500 square foot house and ended up being a 6,000 square foot house with 3 floors. So it was like growing up on a farm. When I got out of bed in the morning, Rich, I got something for you to do. There's always some farm-like work to be done. And that's the life that I grew up into. But I ran away from home when I was 27 years old because we did a big, gigantic job in Chicago. We were supposed to be getting a big pot of gold at the end, and it just didn't work out. My dad said something like, gee, Rich, it just didn't work out that way. And my brother and I had worked very hard because we had that pot of gold at the end of this 2-year project. And so I said, you know what? When I get back from skiing out west, that I did every year, because landscape architecture closes at November. So I used to go out west every year and come back in time for Valentine's Day or tax day. And I put the word out to everybody I knew. And the guy that answered was Cy Cohen at Eder Manufacturing, a Milwaukee flag maker and printer. They had partners that the Eder family had partners that were also in the flagpole business, but I was in the printing business. And Cy said, I got a great job for you. I got a girl that's going to the Army, and she'll be leaving around, the summer. She's going into the Army. I said, haven't you got anything else that I could do there until then? Because I don't want to go back and work for my father. And he said, well, Rich, the only job I've really got is the driver. Fine, I'll take that job. And so I'm a guy that came in and reorganized the shipping department by being the driver. What that taught me was that anybody can have an influence on the business, no matter what job you have, because I organized the job that I did. Because when you're supposed to send something to the sewing division at the building that was across town, there was no paperwork. Everything got lost, not on my watch. So 6 to 7, 8 months later, they wanted to give me a promotion and make me in charge of production control. And thus this meant I wasn't wearing khakis anymore. I started to wear suits to work. I wore suits so I would never have to go into the basement and cut cork ever again. And I was never going to load anything into the truck. And so all of a sudden overnight, Richard, really? Richard, the driver's now in charge of production control? Yes. And I had to work with the two ladies that were there. And I was a natural at scheduling because in landscape architecture, that's literally all you do is schedule who comes when, how you have to do excavation first, then you do the prepping of the land, and then you put in the trees and swimming pools or whatever you're doing, and then you have the finishing. It's all doing things in construction order. At that time, when I was doing control, production control, two guys, mystery guys, came in. They were the pros from Dover, I call them, from the MASH magazine. But these guys whirled in and were hot dogs. I had to go pick them up at the airport. And also,
hang on, you knew nothing about screen printing until you were put into production control.
I still know nothing about. I know about what has to be done, what mysteries have to go, what you needed to write down. I knew how to write a production order, but I'd never touched a squeegee or cured a shirt.
Right.
So Duke Dalton and Jeffrey Gittimer arrive and shake the place up. First thing they do is they say to me, when we're out for lunch, they say, I don't like the hotel, and we need a Space Invaders machine, and we need a better cheeseburger. I said, okay. And again, remember back to MASH.
Yeah.
That's exactly the sort of thing that happened. I'm sure that's what influenced me. So I called up Red's Gaming. I still remember that name. Don't ask me what I did this morning, but I called up Red's Gaming and got the name, Major Goolsby's, moved them to a hotel I knew, the Knickerbocker Hotel. And the next day, they're at Major Goolsby's having a big cheeseburger and playing Space Invaders for lunch. All of a sudden, I'm meeting with them, doing the new forms, because we're at the hotel late at night, drawing up forms, which we did in the 1980. We did them like this on paper with pencils and ink, and drawing them in and photocopying them later. This was just the start. I worked with Duke and Jeffrey as in the 2 or 3 visits they made, and then they said to the owners, we think Richard should take over the printing department. And I didn't want to do this at all. I'm in nice, clean clothes. I'm working in an office with girls. And the next thing I know, I'm upstairs and I don't know anything about screen. I don't know how to turn on the oven. I don't know what the ink is. Plastisol. What is this plastisol? Well, thank goodness that I'm a library guy, because the Greaves family religion was the library. Sundays, that's where we went. So I find the names of people just like I did when I was in the shipping department. I didn't know anything about the shipping department either. So I read my way and experimented my way into, being a very knowledgeable, in many ways, a full color process printer, because we did an awful lot of full color process printing at Eater Manufacturing. And those are very interesting jobs, like a picture of black baseball players with the Milwaukee Brewer hat on, trying to get all those details to come out with CMYK in 1979 and 1980. It would be 1980, 1981 is when I was actually doing the printing. But I found out that...
Was it flags or t-shirt? I mean, I know it was a flag company.
Oh, you make a good point. There were flags, which are gigantic screens, some of which, I figured out a way to expose them outside, because there were some frames that were larger than our exposure unit. So I figured out a way to do it out in the alley with the sun. I read something in a book, probably that black book with the white spiral binding on it. I can't remember. What was the name of that book?
I couldn't find a copy this morning. I'm looking around.
So How to Print T-shirt for Fun and Profit was there. And I made a good success of working there. I learned how to make zinc. I learned how to make screens. And I wasn't getting any more money. Hello, that's why I went to work. I went to work to make money. And after a 6-month period, and then a 6-month period, and a 6-month period of having my friend Cy Cohen and Mel Shakora tell me, oh, Richard, it just didn't work out this way. Exactly what my father had said. And so I didn't resign, but we had a meeting where I confronted my boss, and he said, come with me. It was one of these, come with me. We walk out the front desk, and he yells to Joe, we're going for lunch. And Joe says, it's 10:30. So we went to Cousins, the sub shop, for 2.5 hours. And what Cy Cohn said to me about halfway through is that time is not going to solve this problem. I wanted to make money. I wasn't making any money with my dad, so I'm going to come here and work for 2.5 years and never make any more money. No, especially because I was doing stuff that was helping them in a big way.
Sure.
In a big way. But I owe because that's where I met Barbara Roberts, where I met Donald Roberts, people you don't know, but they're the most important people in my life that I've ever met. And Jeffrey and Duke, they're the ones that introduced me. They were the outside world to screen printing. So I worked for 2 weeks, got everything done, had 2 weeks of scheduling ahead because they didn't want me to tell anybody I was leaving. So at the end of the day, I said, today was my last day. So long. And it was a big shocker. I get home on Saturday, Vern Hollebeck calls me. Now, Vern Hollebeck, if you don't know, he was a major, major player in the late 70s and the early 80s in heat transfers. You knew Vern, didn't you?
I knew Vern. Yeah.
So he was across town in Milwaukee, and he said, Richard, I hear you're no longer an eater. Come and work for me. That's how hard it was for me to get that job. But they didn't want to do screen printing. They wanted, I don't know what they wanted me. They wanted me to do sales. So that lasted 6 weeks. So I only worked for 6 weeks for Vern Hollebeck. I spent more time building a flock machine, and I think it's called Building 7, than anything else, which is just, I knew about screen printing. They had a Mogg and Schenck machine, but they probably only owned 24 screens. This was not the kind of a place for me. I couldn't grow there, and I wasn't going to do door-to-door salesman. So this is when Jeffrey Gittimer says, I can help you. Come to California. I've got a consulting job for you. So the next thing I know, I'm literally on a plane to San Diego where I do 90 days at a place called California Custom Tees in,
San
Diego. It's north of San Diego, Nashville City.
Oh, Nashville City, yeah.
Right Nashville City, sir. And I arrived with my banker's box full of all my secret notes and whatever. And I know I revolutionized that place. My favorite story from that story. I am friends with some of the guys that are still on the, that I worked with there. I'm still friends with them on Facebook. Ken Miller, I watch his news feed on a regular basis, but I remember that when I walked in, they had a precision oval, but it was green. So they painted it. There were no precision ovals that were green. And I look around and the machine's not really running that well. And I'm looking around and then I look down and I see that the oil filter is also painted green, the same color as the press. So I look around and say, when's the last time you changed the oil filter? And the guy says, what oil filter? So the genius says, well, first thing let's do is let's change the oil filter and see what sludge is running around there. So we, put it on a new Fram oil filter, and immediately the press starts to work better. Except now the full pressure of the pumps are working and all the leaks start. So in my first couple of days there, I'm not really the hero that I wanted to be. I am look at this. So we only had to spend about $1,400 getting new hoses for the precision oval, and we didn't print for 3 or 4 days. But the machine ran better than ever, of course, that sort of thing. So that's.
Have you seen an oval before then?
No.
Because at Eater, there was no
automatic
equipment at Eater?
We had Advance Cameo. We had an Advance Cameo, a 6-color Cameo. So it was a V machine. It was 6 printing heads mounted around what's little more than a Rotatex table. Yeah. But that's what we printed. But we also printed on flat tables with the flags. That was the real front of the business. But the Eater people were also one of the largest shirt distributors. So all we had to do is go to the warehouse because we had a warehouse that we wholesaled in a completely different part of the building.
Right.
And there was also sewing and the hemming and all those sort of things that I learned in the sewing world, in that world. So I did this job in California, and then I said, okay. I came back and said, I'm ready. I want to move to the East Coast. I want to move to the East Coast because that's the cool part of the world. So from Boston to, let's say, Washington, D.C., that's where I wanted to live. So I had friends in Boston, and I went and visited. And I had a case of Moët Chandon White Star, so that when I left, I'd leave them a bottle of champagne because I'm sleeping on couches and stuff like that. So I visited some friends I had made in Boston, and I went to New York City, and then I went to Washington, D.C., and then I went to go see Jeffrey Gitomer, who was in Richmond, Virginia, working at Virginia Textiles, Jerry Gorday's company. Again, a very interesting story about Jerry Gorday. And while I was there, Duke Dalton, who had a factory in Hickory, North Carolina, he came to visit me. No, it wasn't Hickory yet. It was Statesville, North Carolina. Sorry, wrong city. And Duke said, don't come and work for Jerry Gorday. Come and work for Walter Monroe and me down in Statesville. And it was working for Duke, but it was 3 or 4 hours further south. I was never going to get to New York City the way I wanted to. So, okay, I went. I took a room in a man's house with a lady tuned me on and says, hey, I know Willie Merritt wants to, has got a room for rent. So I stayed very inexpensively in the upper floor of a guy's house. And we hardly ever saw each other. He ran the clothing store, and then everybody knew Louis Merritt. And when I said I live with Louis Merritt, little did I know that Louis Merritt was perhaps the most gay person or only gay person in the city of Statesville. So it didn't matter to me. But every time I said when I lived, because I didn't know yet, later on, he actually told me that, but I used to get the eyeball from that because I was clearly a stranger in town I was from the north, I talk funny. So this is the location where Duke and I took an Aero multi-printer and we extended the arms and we extended the arms that held the printing presses so we could put in 30 by 40 inch platens to print 30 by 40 inch frames to print garments before they were sewn. So we're the ones that made the Adidas golf shirts that John McEnroe wore to Wimbledon and got into a lot of trouble because he wasn't wearing whites. He had this black streak around the bottom. But that's what Carolina Textiles produced, was collar and placket shirts, and we printed them before they were sewn. And so this taught me a tremendous amount about how shirts were made. And that's where I took the sewing courses from the guy that did the sewing information. I started there, and I always was the production control guy. And when I got there, I had said that, could I have somebody to help with secretarial work for production stuff? They said, sure, we'll get you a secretary, not a problem. So this is my dream, finally a secretary. But unfortunately, they gave me a secretary that could not type. So, I could type 60 words a minute. I took typing in school, and she couldn't type. And so I said, I really can't use you then. So she lasted one day and was dismissed from the company. They gave her a severance and whatever. Little did I know that I had fired the mother of one of the most important ladies in the sewing factory. So every time I walked through the sewing factory, there was kind of oh, are you the guy that fired Francine's mom? So that was the reputation that I started out with. But we did a lot of interesting art, printed a lot of full color process. That's where I met Terry Kaiserman. He came to teach us, and this is where I learned how to print water-based ink in 1981 and 1982. Water-based ink for that super soft hand that we all love, and those rich colors from Italian pigments that you can't even begin to think about how fabulous they were compared to plastisol printing. I was already
now. You should comment though. No one was doing process printing back then. It was it was unheard of practically.
It was a rarity because you couldn't get anybody to really do the separations. The stuff that I did at Eder Manufacturing, we were just taking regular litho things and kind of trying to make them print. They were not things I'm proud of, although I should have brought it down. I did print what is my favorite of the old shirts, and it's a picture of the creature from the Black Lagoon, and he's climbing out of a swimming pool, and he's got Speedo trunks on. And it, it looks okay, but it's my favorite print because I printed it. So,
well, there was no reference. People would see the shirt and they would never know what the original artwork looked like. So they would figure,
right,
well,
right.
that's
but
cool.
It was not, the inks were not what they are now. The screens were not what they are now. So
I didn't know you met Terry, by the way. I know many of your stories because we've been hanging out for all these years, but I didn't know you met Terry through your time with Duke.
Catawba Color and Chemical. He was only a salesman, although he was still running, what was the name of it now? Transformania. He was still running Transformania in Miami, this was, this was his side job because he was making ink. And that's when we'll get Terry to, I'm not good on Terry's origin stories, but he'd been in the family wallpapering business for a million years before then. He grew up with water-based ink in his mouth, so from the bottle. But that's where I learned sewing. That's where I learned custom garment manufacture. And again, we ran into a situation there where there was no raises. There was never going to be any more money. And again, we were doing some terrific work. And I had a confrontation with Walter Monroe, and he didn't like the way I talked back to him. And he said, "That's it. You're gone. You're out of here." Okay, Walter. And literally, I'm at dinner that night with Duke Dalton and a guy from Miami. Duke is in town. He's meeting with this guy. And he said, "Here, you take this job I was going to do in Miami." Okay. And so literally that weekend, I fly to Miami, Florida. I left my car at the airport and I came back 75 days later. It was a gigantic bill, which the client paid for. But all of a sudden I'm ensconced doing a consulting job in Miami, Florida, for a company that was in the construction business. So they needed uniforms for their guys. They owned a bar. They had their fingers in all sorts of things. And they brought me in. Literally, I met the accountant guy, and he says, "Hi, I'm whatever his name was. Here, sign these papers." And he gave me the keys to a truck, and he gave me the keys to the building, and he said, "Sign this check cashing form. Okay, you're in charge. Bye." And the next morning, I show up with a minor introduction, and I'm in charge. They were 6 weeks behind doing ad specialty work. And it took 3, 4, 5 weeks to catch up. And then I started to call and say, "I'm going to run out of work next week if you guys don't, because I was able to generate things or get things done much better, flexing my consulting muscle there." So that caused some troubles. But what really caused some troubles were we had, a warehouse in the back, and guys would come in and guys would leave with bundles under their arm. "Who is that guy?" "Oh, he's going over to WSUN, the radio station." "Don't worry about that, Rich." And, you hear "don't worry about that, Rich" a few times, and I get a bit suspicious, and I cause trouble. I'm actually not remembering that well, but there was a grift going on where they were selling stuff out of the back, and the next thing I know, I was being handed my severance check because they were stealing out of the backyard, but the accountant happened to be the head of the ring that was doing it. He fired me, and it caused a scandal, and he was fired about 2 weeks after I was thrown out. But you see, they'd forgotten that I was the one writing the checks, and I had just paid a 2-week on my Howard Johnson motel room. So I had 2 more weeks that I stayed in Miami, courtesy of them. This is also the time where I really befriended Rich Hoffman. I had befriended him in other work that we'd done, especially when I visited Advance and met his dad, who was the electrician at Advance. And
now, hang on. For those that don't know, Rich Hoffman didn't own M&R then. M&R didn't exist.
Oh no, he worked.
You're talking Advanced Process.
At Advanced Process, and he was a technical guy. Do you know you're out of focus?
Me?
Yeah, I'm seeing you as out of focus.
It should be autofocus. It didn't.
Well, I'm keeping on with my story. So it was Rich Hoffman who, when he came to visit, he stayed late and he showed me all sorts of details about the Aero multi-printer that was there, which to me, that was the premier machine of the industry. There weren't all the machines we had. You had the Precision Oval and you had the Aero multi-printer.
Yeah.
And he showed me all the secrets on how to tune the machine late one night. And that's when I really befriended Rich Hoffman. And afterwards, it was always, I want Rich Hoffman to come and fix my equipment. And can you imagine the way things turned out that I'm demanding that Rich Hoffman fix my equipment? So now I'm lost, so to speak. And I'm not exactly sure what to do. And so Jeffrey Gittimer tells me that he has found some guys with a printing company and they need my kind of input. And so Jeffrey Gittimer was the sales partner. And this is where we created Shadow Graphics and United Shirts of America, which is my best claim to fame, the best factory that I ever worked at. So what we did was we took over a building that needed to be rehabbed, and I was excellent at doing that. We took a building and turned it into a 4 automatic press building, built the screen rooms, built the entire process. And what we specialized in was printing the sleeves before they were sewn. And this was basically unheard of, but I'd learned how to do that at Carolina Pacific down in Statesville, North Carolina. So we literally would get cones of thread shipped up from North Carolina, sent to the contract knitter. Then we'd send that to the contract dye house. Then they'd send it to the contract cutter, and then they would be sewn, and the sleeves they might send to us. And then they would all come to us, and we would print the body once the sleeves were sewn on the shirt. We were able to take shirts that we could literally build for, let's say, $24 a dozen. These are long sleeve shirts, were also pretty much unheard of except in the surfing industry of California. So G&S Sports or surfboard companies like that, they were the only ones that were really doing that sort of thing. Ocean Pacific were doing long sleeve shirts, but that's what we specialized in. So Lang ski boots, we had artists that designed the penguins would climb up the arm and then go through the ski down and go over the L, which was made to look like a ski jump, and they would land over here where my watch was. So if you stood like this, you had a story going on. We had skiers skiing through birch trees. And the birch trees are on the arms and up and down like this, because if you try and do something across, like we had to do for Jerry, where we do a big stripe like a sweater, where you had to match up there and across, that was really hard, because if a girlfriend is wearing their boyfriend's shirt, the shoulders never fit. So I try to design things that were up and down ideas, because then it didn't matter what you did. There were trees and you're skiing down the side of a hill. That would be the largest claim to fame of what we did as a company. We attracted the attention of a lot of people, but it was Duke Dalton, who had a company called Harlequin Nature Graphics come to him to print the Cheeseburger in Paradise design. It was a Jim Mazzotta design of a Jimmy Buffett song, the Cheeseburger in Paradise. Duke couldn't print it. And so he said, you should go up and have Richard print it for you. Definitely full color process. And definitely I was working with Fred Clarke at this time and making a name for myself as a full color process printer. There was Coudray on the West Coast. You had Jerry Claus in Atlantic City, and there was me. And yes, the world beat a path to our door because we could do stuff that a lot of people couldn't.
But for those who didn't know, Fred Clarke was the man who did separations the old school way, not computer graphics. Fred died many years ago, but Fred was the guy. And it'd be fun to interview Fred, but he's gone. But I mean, he was the guy.
30 years, yeah.
I mean, and that's when you would pay $600, $700, $800 for separations. I mean, it was,
and it would take 7 days because he did them with a camera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, he was a pioneer, and he was your magic guy in the corner.
Oh yeah,
I think.
Oh yeah. So we got the original art board, sent it out to Fred Clarke, and then got the separations back and spent, a time tuning it up because Michael Latone and his crew from Jimmy Buffett were coming to look at the design. And I've got the board right next to the actual shirt, and they look exactly the same. We are so proud, so proud. And he comes in and says, "Gee, kid, could you just boost up the colors a little bit?" And what I remember is he called me kid. We're long, we become fast friends. But that's how I met him. I did explain, yes, we could, and it took about 2 hours to get the design not to look like the original art, which is something that I argued with art people a lot. I'm pointing at you representing art people. But that's when we started to print for Jimmy Buffett's Caribbean Soul. And we made shirts for Jimmy Buffett's Caribbean Soul. And they were not the concert shirts. That's the ones we always wanted. Steve Humphries, called Hobbit, his sales manager, his tour manager, he tried to get us some of that work, but that stuff was like 1 and 2 colors, easy to do. Nope. We got all the hard stuff, complicated full color process design, but we probably did, I think, 20 different designs for Jimmy Buffett's Caribbean Soul. After a while, we lost that account and it went to, now I'm trying to remember who actually got Turner Industries that were actually making the shirts also. And I don't remember how we actually lost that account, but the party that we had to introduce Jimmy Buffett's Caribbean Soul, it was at the Imprinted Sportswear show. No, it would be the SGIA show in Los Angeles. I'm forgetting what year it would be. It'd be 82, 83, 84, somewhere in there. And we invited every single purchaser you can imagine in the department store world. Again, it's 1982, 3 or 4. And who played at the party? Jimmy Buffett and his Caribbean band.
Of course.
And so we had 45 minutes of Jimmy Buffett and the most expensive food I've ever seen at any class of a party, which is all paid for me and my partners. So I really had nothing to do with that. My partners are the ones that generated that. That's Jeffrey Gittimer and a few other people, Steve Morris and his family, that were the investors in the company at that time. And I've never been to a better party except for Pat Hazel at Jeffrey Gittimer's Las Vegas sales conference that happened about 10, 15 years ago. I'm just throwing that in as the best parties I've ever been to in my life. We did work for the 1984 Olympics. We did shirts for so many different companies, and we're a showroom for Advanced Process. But we did a job for Head Sportswear. And we made a tremendous amount of fabric, investing in the fabric. It's all factored money. And then Head came back and said, the designs are not really selling that well. We're canceling the order. What? You're canceling the order? Yeah. And in a quiet part of the room, he said, we don't give a shit. There's nothing you can do about it. 5 years from now, we're going to be at different companies. You're screwed, said the guy from Head. And we were, because we now had all this fabric that we'd bought and paid for, and it was Head girl colors, pinks and teals and stuff like that. And it was cut in female tube sizes and stuff like that. It was really hard to get rid of. And the partner said, you know what? Screw it. We'll farm the work out to Jerry Claus in Atlantic City, Cape May Courthouse. So they just took my shop that I'd built the way I wanted the shop to be done with my crew and said, that's it. That's too bad. Bye. If we get Wendy Painter to come on the show, she'll be able to give you the background stories. I hope there'll be some juicy ones about me, but some good ones about me too.
Yeah.
Because I hope I ruined other companies that anybody ever worked for, because I was a good boss, but a tough boss.
What year do you think that was?
That's going to be 1985, because one of the things that happened was that at a trade show, SGIA. Oh, no, you know what? It was 1984. I'm jumping around. I'll just tell a backstory. It's 1984, and I'm at Tech Simps in Chicago at the Blackstone Hotel. And I'm sitting in the lobby doing, I don't know what. And an odd-looking character comes in with 2 carts filled with boxes of stuff sticking out, automobile tires and a flag and stuff like that. And he's dragging this stuff in. I wonder who that guy is. Well, that turned out to be Don Newman. Little did I know that 9 months from then, I would be lugging those same carts through the lobby of the Hyatt Hotel in New Orleans, because
Hold your thought. For those that don't know, Tech Simps was, I think, every year.
Yep.
Or was it more than one time a year?
No, it was Technical Symposium by SGIA.
I think as time went on, I think you spoke at them. I spoke at some of them. I spoke in, it was kind of the thing to do. It was pre-internet, obviously, so it was a chance for people to go to a symposium and ask questions and stuff. And they would get hundreds of people. I mean, you'd have rooms full of people.
It was a technical symposium, so it was only tech stuff, which is what the SGIA used to be,
right?
Not what it is.
Not now.
Turned out to be.
All right. So you met Don Newman at a Tech Simps. I didn't know that's true.
No, it was Mr. Coudray said, "Oh, you've got to meet Don Newman." Okay, I heard about him. I read about him, and Don and another guy that was there, they asked me a couple of questions, and I think it was a question like, "What happens to the mesh?" As you printed it. It was something. It was a kind of a, "We'll see if we could track the kid." Now I'm making fun of myself as the kid, but I went, well, with cold flow, if you haven't work hardened the mesh, I'm trying to think of how I would have said it then, but if you haven't work hardened the mesh, you'll lose tension. You'll never be able to get it back, which is probably what makes your machine so on. And I remember Don looked over at Coudray and looked over to the other guy and said, "I like him," because I wasn't stumped by those particular questions, that I had I thought it through kind of a lesson. And I then started to buy Newman roller frames. I went down, took the factory training, because it was only 45 minutes away in downtown Philadelphia. So I took the training, and then I told Wendy Painter and Elise, the screen making, and Wendy Painter is the one who ran my factory. And I said, "That's it. We will never use the stretch air bars ever again." Okay, they were up on the wall, and we only used Newman roller frames. We bought 12 every week. Came from Podger every week. Bought 12 because we couldn't afford to buy 600 frames. Right. But pretty soon, Alan and the other printers saying, "Hey, could I have the white print, the flash, the base print? Could I have that on one of those Newmans?" And that's all it really took. And of course, because we're printing full color process, the standardized tension is what put me over the top, because we just didn't have that much difficulty getting it to register and matching the same colors every time. I was hooked. And we had to close it. When we had to close down the factory, Don Newman calls me up. "Could you run the show for me in New Orleans?" I went, "Sure." And so I had to learn how to build the frame. And this was like in August or something. I had months to do. He says, "Here's the keys to our warehouse, secret warehouse. See what you have to do it." And I love those kind of jobs, because they threw me the keys and said, "I don't know how the booth goes up." And I don't know if you remember what the booth
frames
looked like. It was made out of Newman roller frames.
Yeah.
But there was no instructions included. We could have used instructions, and thus I had a video camera. This is also unheard of in those days. I had a video camera, and I filmed the going up and the going down of the frame, so I had a way to actually learn how to do it later. And again, this is 1984, 85. So I ran that show as a stage manager for Donald, and it was interesting because if I'd wanted a milling machine, Don would have put a milling machine on the truck to go down. And I remember calling the guys at Precision and asking them, what trucks did you use? It was an Italian company, right? You know, it was like Cimarota or something like that. And we used them to truck the 2 70-foot vans to go down there. And we met a Teamster guy there, Joe Bat, which I'm sure was Joe Batista. He was the guy that helped us set up the booth, Joe Batista. I hired him to do our shows all over the country for the next 5 or 10 years. You know, wow. The guys that I met there. Why would we, you know, he was a Teamster. All we had to do was fly him out, and he knew how to do stuff. And he did his, you know, it just the things that I met as I went along. And there I am dropping names of people that you will never know.
How long did you work for Don?
18 months. Oh, no, sorry. Not 18 months, 16 months.
See, for years, I thought you'd worked for him for like 4 or 5 years. It just seemed like...
Because I never stopped talking. Ask me now, and I'll still give you the, you know, I'm a Newman guy. I've got everything but Donald's initials tattooed on my butt or branded on my butt. Mm-hmm. I drank the Kool-Aid. Right. I drank the Kool-Aid. Yes, I've used stretch and glue frames, and I understand them, but, you know, I used to be the second fastest Newman roller frame stretcher in the world.
Because you were great.
Christine Panasek will always beat me. Christine Panasek and Maggie Long, they were, you know, first of all, they're girls, but that's okay. But Maggie Long was I think she's 4'10", and she had that big torque wrench. But she was smooth. Maggie Long and Christine Panasek were smooth. And as the old Navy SEAL training goes, that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. I could never beat Christine Panasek in stretching the standard Hopkins style frames that we developed when I was at Stretch Devices. But Donald wanted a much longer thing, and you know what? He wanted me to start calling on trade shows too. I mean, just calling direct on customers. I did go teach people. I would travel with reps. So that's where I got to meet guys like NASDAR's Bruce Ridge. You know, you meet the Granberries because I travel with Texas Screen Supply. Right. And now Graphic Solutions Group. That's where I met Russ May and all the guys up in Mid-Sign and Screen Supply. I made terrific contacts through Stretch Devices, but it was time to move on. And I did work shows for Donald for years afterwards.
I think that's why I think a lot of us thought you worked for him for a longer time, because you worked the booth and worked the shows and hung, and you drank the Kool-Aid and you talked the talk and all that.
After that, it was strictly consulting. In the 1990s, Joe Clarke, 1992 or 3, 1, 2, or 3, I forget what, Joe Clarke asked me to work with him on some programs and stuff at M&R when he was the president of M&R. And so I worked as his second, more as an assistant. I was a consultant. I wasn't ever really on the payroll, but I had my own office. And I worked there. I think I worked there for like a year and a half until Joe left the company, and I left 2 days afterwards because when Joe was gone, they didn't have any need for me anymore. And it was a great time to be at M&R because they were really expanding. You know, that's when they first started to get outside finance money, and it just the fact that I got to work with Joe Clarke every day, and then we go have dinner, you know, that sort of thing. So it was spending a year and a half with Joe Clarke, and I was, with all due respect to my good friend Joe, I was the Clarke whisperer. And, Joe just didn't, for whatever reason, he was shy about getting people to do stuff, even though he was president of M&R. There was only Rich Hoffman that was any higher than him. But what I would do is I would whisper to somebody downstairs, get something done. Hey, Joe would like you to do this. His secretary would type up stuff for me. But Joe would, I don't want to, you know, I don't know. We can do that ourselves. He just wasn't used to the team. We worked but I was used to getting other people to do what I want them to do.
Were you writing for Printware then?
So I wrote for Screen Printing Magazine starting in 1995. I said 95, 1985. And I worked until 93, 94, something like that. And what happened was, I wrote a regular column in Screen Printing Magazine, and I was missing columns. I was leaving them short. I was the bad boy. And Steve Ducilli fired me for missing a column. But unfortunately, and I'll use this in my defense, I love you, Steve, but Steve, when he became the publisher, not the publisher, but the editor, he insisted I write a contract. I had a contract. Really? I never had a contract with Souvenel and Tomasz Freszka. Okay. Oh, here it says that if I miss a column, you have the permission to run one of my old columns and not pay me. Okay. It's in the contract. So I said once too many times, I believe it was the third time I said, just run one of my old columns. And then I got a fax because I think I was overseas, someplace that we wouldn't be needing yours. And Jeff McHugh would be taking over my spot in the magazine. So that was how I left. And literally, again, my reputation preceded me. And Mark Buchanan called and said, how about writing a column for me? And I feel a little sheepish, but I made them pay. I asked for a lot of money because I got nothing to lose, because screen printing did not pay much at all.
So that was Printware magazine, Mark Buchanan.
Printware magazine paid me a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think people think of you as writing for them more than they do. I mean, I knew you wrote for screen printing, but I think that your reputation, Greaves on Garments, was like if you got a Printware magazine in, you would look through the ads and stuff. But I tell you what, I'd always go to your column just to see what you're having to say, because you were flip and witty and had a nice writing style, very casual.
Thank you.
And it was always, it was an easy read, but you'd learn something. There would be meat in around Greaves being Greaves.
So I worked there until I actually don't remember when the last time.
When did you start? 95, you said?
Yes, in 95 I started.
Weren't you there like 10 years?
I don't remember. I don't remember. One of the things that did cause conflicts was that Impressions magazine, I'd worked at the Impression shows from like 1984 on, every single show.
As a speaker, like I did. You just, yeah.
And that's something that Barbara Montgomery hired me to do. Deborah Sexton, they were the bosses of the magazine at that time. And you also had Carl Piazza, who ran the shows. And those were the good old days. And that was my marketing scheme for consulting, because they paid my way. They flew you, they put you up in a hotel and paid you money.
Yeah.
So it was a great time to be a speaker. And I know that it never went over that when I went to Printware. Now that was a competing magazine show, because they also had the Printware shows. And so that caused some strife with Impressions. And I know that in the early 2000s, they just didn't hire me at ISS shows anymore. I'm remembering when I got that word, but.
Well, there was a time, I don't know who the publisher was then, but it used to be they had like a trade magazine row where they would reciprocate. ISS would have the other magazines there. Then they changed that. It was No More Nice Guy. I don't know whether it was Marshall Siegel or who the show director was, but it became all of a sudden pretty cutthroat. And that's when they cut you out. Yeah. And, you were with the enemy. You were in the wrong camp.
For a while at Printware shows, I was the only guy that talked about screen printing.
Mm-hmm.
Lon Winters has written more for Printware magazine than I ever will, because he started a feature column with Jason, while I was still in the magazine. Again, I'm not remembering the details of how things like that faded away, but the magazines, when I was a salesman for Stretch Devices, I'd go into any place, sit in the waiting room, and of course they had a screen printing magazine out on the table. So I'd crack that baby open and flatten it out so that
Here's my picture.
my picture just happened to be out there. So it was the greatest business card in the world. You say, well, here, I wrote about that in screen printing. Here, you got the old one? Because everybody had screen printing magazine and impressions magazine. I mean, it was the only thing to have. It was basically the only two magazines. You had the press and t-shirt retail and stuff like that. So there were other magazines, but the screen printing magazine was the one. 360 pages in
the day. Yeah.
And that's where the ads were, pre-internet.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to know anything, you had to read the magazines.
Yeah. You always look forward to it.
Yeah.
Where'd you go after you did Printware, though? You still did consulting. You always did consulting.
Yes, because from even during the M&R time, I still did consulting. I did consulting for stalls. I did road shows for stalls where I was the name, with all due respect, and they got screen printers to come to the shows that they did, and they pitched their graphics arts system.
Yeah.
It's in the early days of the printers. You and I have talked about this in the past, that you had the what was the name of the guy that had the Texas Instruments thing? Vital Laser. Vital Laser type is the one.
J. Markov was the guy's name.
And so he had the Texas Instrument 2108 printer that you could crank up the temperature on the fuser, and that's what made it the machine. But Stahls discovered Cume crystal print publisher, and so those are the rival 8.5 by 11 inch vellum printing laser printers. They really didn't have a lot of film. Autotype and a few other people created textured film later on in life. That's something else we could follow up on.
Yeah,
I worked with Autotype on that one year. But those are the introduction of computer generated artwork, until you taught the world how to use an Epson 3000 to make inkjet positives.
Yeah, but you and I have talked before that. I promoted Zonte. We used to sell Cume crystal print publishers. That was really what you had, other than the camera.
So you remember when we were at some trade show in Philadelphia, the paint show or the print show? I forget which one it was. And we were walking down the aisle, and you look at me, I look at you and say, "Did you see that?" And I nodded it. I remember this distinctly. And we went back, and there was the Cume crystal print publisher, which did 11 by 7.
Funny how you have those moments. The light turns on, you go, "Holy shit!"
Did you see that?
Yeah.
But it was the paint or the print show. It wasn't a T-shirt show. It wasn't a screen printing show.
Right.
I think it was Philadelphia because I lived there at that time.
Right. So after Printware, which you think might have been 2004, what were you doing? Then I'm sorry. I know your history too.
Right. So I traveled the world. One of the benefits of that I've had was a rich association with Stretch, a rich association with Advance, and of course Advance when we did with M&R International, I got to go to all sorts of international shows, and on my own dime, I started going to FESPA every year, 84, 88, whatever. And I know that it was, I'm embarrassed now.
Well, FESPA was the big European show
I know that FESPA was a big European show.
No, but I mean, for the people that don't know, that you go to once a year.
You're right. And it used to be once every 4 years.
Yeah. Yes. I forgot.
I apologize. His name will come to me in 2 minutes. A guy from Sati said, "Richard, I'm going to Sati after the FESPA. You want to come along?" And so that was my first introduction. I feel so. This is my old age coming up with me. So that was my first tour to Sati. And when I got to Sati, Andre Paiskins was there. And I got treated like royalty when I was there, put up at the Grand Hotel by the Saudi people. But I spent 4 days teaching them how to stretch Newman roller frames. I gave seminars, and we did a lot of interesting work on that first visit. And then anytime I've ever gone to Italy, somehow I found my way to Como. Paul Salenica. Jeez.
I don't think I knew him. He's
the guy that introduced me to the whole family. I know that the first time I went, I said, "Oh, we'll eat in the cafeteria," and I'm sort of going, "Oh, yeah, okay, the cafeteria, yeah, sure, I'm used to that." Except this is an Italian cafeteria. This is an Italian cafeteria that had the best food I had in Italy. Everything was amazing. I want to eat in the cafeteria every single time. 4 years later, when I went, Dr. Novaresi told me, he says, "Richard, I know how much you like the cafeteria. Unfortunately, it's cold for renovations. We'll have to go to my club for lunch."
The hardship.
So his club, when we're sitting out on this patio, if you'd have gone 10 more feet, you'd fall off into the crevasse. We're up in the mountains. We're in the Alps, the lesser Alps. That's where Como is. That's where Sati is. And I just fantastico. I never had a bad meal. Entertainment. I owe them. They've always treated me so well. Thank you, Sati.
So when did you go to work for Lawson, though?
So.
Oh no, hang on. I'm going to tell your story. Before Lawson, you were back running Coastal.
Yes, in 1995. What happened? What did I do before then? I'm trying to remember. I need a timeline here. In 1995, Bruce Ridge took me to Coastal Print, which said, "You should get hired by these guys," and I did. Bruce Ridge was a representative for NASDAR, still is, and a good friend of mine. And so, okay, I moved to California from Philadelphia. And this is an instance where I literally came in on a 2-week consulting job to test me out. And then they said, "Yes, we want you to move out." And, they paid for everything. I have nothing to say. In fact, unfortunately, Robert Sarley died around the Christmas time. He's just recently died. He and his wife owned the company, but their original plan was that they wanted to move back to Chicago. And so I'm rubbing my hands together. I'm going, all right. It was a nice shop, well known, and again, I still had a fantastic reputation, and the world beat a path to my door. When the SGI show was there in 1995, a bus of Australians came to Coastal Printworks because they knew I was there. And I knew a lot of the guys that were on the bus, but we came to visit you, Richard. They brought the whole bus full of people. And okay. There were more people in the bus than there were in the factory. But I got all the reps to come and visit me. That was always a good thing. And we did a lot of printing for the studios because in the San Fernando Valley, which just, you're right there in Hollywood. Everything in Los Angeles is really run by the studios, so to speak. And I had a terrific time there, but the best thing I did was what I did in my 2-week consulting. And they were having troubles with the full color process separations. And I said, "Well, it's because of the SEPs you're using." "Yes, but these are only $175 each."
Turn them on to Campos.
That's right. So I paid myself to have a job separated before I came. Jeff Campos to me, he gave me a good deal. I didn't have to pay retail, but they had their separator do their SEPs, and then I brought the Campos SEPs. We made screens of each on 2 different presses, and we set them up, and we first redid theirs, and they're going, "Well, what do you think?" And so then Victor and his crew, Victor is the guy that really ran the shop, the guy that spoke Spanish. I didn't speak any Spanish, and so that was definitely a not good thing at Coastal Printworks. But Victor set the job up, and it just set up. They put the squeegees, the flood bars, and True Tone ink in, because Campos had worked with Terry Kaiserman and Coudray and myself, to make, the colors work perfectly. And they put it in, and it was so much better. Why? Because of Terry Kaiserman and Campos. That it was their skills. And that was it. That's how I got the job. But they never really ever wanted to change anything beyond that. I made that change, and they should have just sent me home, because they didn't really want to change anything else. And Bob Sarley and his wife never moved back to Chicago. So again, it was another, well, Rich, it really didn't work out that way.
No money.
Is that me whining? Is that my, what about my plans? What about the promises that I would make? So in 1999, I still lived in California, and I did a lot of consulting out of California, flying all over the world. And then Ben and Dave Landesman hit me up at the trade show in 1999 and said, come and work for us, run the supply division at Lawson. And so I upped and left California for fabulous St. Louis. And Ben and Dave are like brothers to me now. When I got there, here's your alarm code keys, here's your keys. I literally locked the building up myself 4 days into my tenure. Ben said something like, okay, so you know how to lock up? So I was completely trusted from the beginning. I think I did a lot of good things, but mostly what I did was I got them a much better website. I did website things.
They needed you. They were pathetic.
Well, everybody in 2000, nobody knew how to make movies. You and I were just learning how to put movies on DVD, learning how to render a DVD. And again, think of video cameras. There was no YouTube yet. There was no, when you wanted to host a movie, that meant that you paid for the upload and the download. So my company, that the people that I worked with, I said, well, you downloaded 200 gigabytes this month, so you'll be getting a bigger check. I found a few places where I could download it, but if 1 week they downloaded the same thing 40 different times, my ISP complained and said, what are you doing? What are you doing? Are you selling software out there or something like that? And movies, to stream movies, it was tough. But I'm making movies in a video camera with tape, then converting the tape to digital, then editing the tape, and then trying to render it into a DVD. Now that's where I one of my first things that I ever copied, I made a safety copy of, was the Ulano VHS videos and the Chromaline VHS videos. And I put those up on the Lawson website. And I remember that Don Marsden called me and says, Richard, how did you do that? I says, well, I had a VHS tape. So they had what would be a horrible website. And so David Landesman would let me, could you change some prices on the web? And he would come down and he'd type in the password into my computer, and I would do some work there. And I forget what it was, but something I did let loose. Something, he gave me the passwords to the website, and I started to put stuff up. I started to answer questions. I started to reword the copy that was in there, and started to rebuild it from scratch. It was one of those things where I came in after I dumped on. He says, and I think there were 3 or 4 times in my career at Lawson, 5 years, that he said, I want you to clear your desk of everything else, and I want you to rebuild the website. And so there, I got permission. And the guys that had originally built the website were not really much help. It was a PHP style website, which if you don't know what PHP is, Scott, you understand what that means. And there was a language. You had to know that sort of stuff. So that was my biggest contribution, was pushing Lawson. Now their website is, now there's none of my stuff is left at all. They've done real well. And, it's been 15 years or more since I left there in 2005. But I really liked working there. Glenn Canania, the guy that does the schools there, we worked on teaching the schools. I remember that I forgot to say that when I was at Dalton Imprints, that we created the American Institute of Screen Printing, which taught automatic screen printers how to work. And we sent people that wanted to learn manually, we sent them to you with your school in Arizona. And when Duke Dalton sold his company to Twin Togs, one of the first things they said is, oh, by the way, that school, that's got to go. And I created the school because we had 10 automatic presses on 2 shifts. That means I had people, quitting. I had 3 people quitting a week. And so I needed to find a way to train people. And so as long as I'm going to teach them how to print, why not get other students to pay for it? And so that's how I talked my way into getting a schoolroom built, and Advanced Process donated a printing press.
Clean deal.
That's what Duke Dalton could do. All of a sudden, we got another automatic press. This is also the team that, when that press was installed, we told our clients, if you'll book enough in advance or give us money up front, we will dedicate 1 printing press to only your work. And we sold that to Puma. We sold it to Nike. We sold it to Adidas. We sold it to about 5 people. My father used to have a boat called 5 Quarters because he sold 5 25% shares in the boat. And then he also was the manager of it. So there was more than enough money. So it's like the producers, the idea of the producers. And that's what we did. And if the people from Puma were coming in, the word went out, quick, change the sign on press number 1. And we changed the Adidas sign to a Puma sign.
Oh my God.
And of course, had to get a Puma job on that press.
Yeah.
So it was bad if the Puma guy's here, quick, get that job.
I thought I knew all your stories. That story I've never heard.
The best one is when Nike accidentally sent us 80,000 black shirts that we just at a 1-color job was supposed to go on. They weren't for us. They got sent to us accidentally. And they owed us a tremendous amount of money. They were another one of the great hey, we're Nike.
Yeah.
Okay, but we aren't. We need the money now. And they say, well, can't you give us more time? HBO was a big one for that when we did work for MTV. It was always, can't you give us a little more time? We're in the Warner building, downtown, New York. And we're, having to deal with guys saying, well, it's HBO that owned them in the early days. Can't you give us some time? It's already 180 days. Let's go. A lot of companies that you got to fire. And Nike was one of those that we really needed to fire after a while.
Yeah. It always sounds good on paper. The brag will do work for Nike.
But we held those shirts hostage until the check came. So, Yep. So that was the criminal enterprise that was Duke Dalton and me together.
That's funny. So after Lawson, you went to, I want to say you lost.
Well, I love Ben and Dave, but not one raise ever.
No more money. I know your story.
So, David Eisenbeis, who I'd known for 20 years at that time. We'd done seminars together in New Zealand and stuff like that. We'd done stuff all over the world. And he said, come and work for Ulano. And, what attracted them was what I'd done to the website. But, I'm sure that I talked it up too, but I got hired at Ulano and moved to New York City, which is where I wanted to be 30 years before. So, hey, it wasn't Manhattan, but it was Brooklyn. And so I moved. And what I certainly did there as the technical product manager at Ulano for 5 years, or supposed to be 5 years, only 4 years. And we did some awfully good work there. I had guys there, Ed Toney and Paul Drago, worked with me. There's no way that I could say that I was the boss. It was the 3 of us together, but we had our separate duties. But you know what my duty was? The website. And boy, did I love that. Answering phones, answering questions, and also having Yulia Finkel next door and Mohammed Akhtar just down the hall, the chemist for Ulano, that if there's something I didn't know, just walk down the hall and I had the answer. And of course, if I had an answer, I put it on the website. And that, if I could have kept that job for the rest of my life, that would have been just fine with me. But instead, I had a stroke. And one Sunday, I'm typing to Jeff Proctor. I'm working on his website. And my arm, it's just not working. I'm looking at it's all D's across the thing. What's happening with my arm? What's going on here? I don't feel good. I stand up. I can't walk too much. Ooh, this is serious. So after a couple of hours, I took a nap. In a couple of hours, I said, I think I better go to the hospital and find out what's going on here.
That was December of 2009 or 2008.
That was January.
Oh, January. Okay.
11th.
2000 before an ISS show. That's why, you know, our lives revolve around show days.
Yeah. Right. And so I get there and I take a cab. He asked if I wanted me to run the lights. I said, no, that's okay. And I sit in the waiting room. You know, you go in, you had to press some buttons or something, you know, say, would you, you know, I fall down. I can't walk anymore. And, you know, I'm not going to, hey, what's going on? And, you know, finally I get put in, they take my blood pressure and it's through the roof. And the girl screams, oh my God, what's it? Stat, I need a stretcher in here. Right. I mean, all of a sudden the receiving room, you should have come in an ambulance. And I believe I said something like, fuck you. Always.
Oh my God.
I should have come in an ambulance. She literally, not really, but she literally jumped over the desk to get that student. And all of a sudden I'm in the back room and it was, you know, in the front lobby, it was, the music is playing. There are people out there. In the back, it's firefighters and paramedics. And the place was a madhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And yep, you're having a stroke. And I spent 4 weeks in hospital, and then I went to rehabilitation. That's what brought me to Michigan. My old friend Gina Conti lives here, and I don't know anybody in New York City who's going to take care of me. I mean, Paul Drago and Ed Tony are not going to take care of me. Yolano took good care of me during my stroke time or whatever. Took care of Gina Conti when she came to visit me, and I spent the summer in Michigan. Then I came back to New York, and I went back on August 9th to go see Al Gershio, and I said, okay, I'm ready. They had not touched my offices. I had 2 offices at the time, and I thought, okay, I'm ready to get back to work. And they went, Rich, I got nothing for you. It wasn't the same as, it did not working out this way, but I think they were worried that I was going to die there or something like that. And it was very disappointing to me because I literally, in the hospital bed, I had them bring me one of my computers. And you know what? When Charlie Fassini came to visit me, he said, you know, is there anything I can do? He said, yeah, can you get me a wireless modem? And the next day he showed up with a modem and, you know, put it on my account. You know, I mean, he did the dirt work and whatever. And so from my hospital bed, I'm changing the website when Yolano fired Mike Staharski and Bob Heisenach. And, you know, I missed the Imprinted Sportswear show because it was in January. That's when you got me that big card that everybody signed.
Michael did that. Michael Fresner went around the show, big poster, everybody signed, get well, Richard.
That meant a lot to me. That meant an awful lot to me.
Yeah.
Don Marsden brought that to me at the hospital. I said, well, I can't really carry it. Can you take it back and put it in my office at the store? So, alas, in August, I spent a few days packing my stuff up, and my apartment had no room for all that stuff. I also had all kinds of stuff that they allowed me to have at the warehouse. And so I had pallets of stuff that, you know, because I've got a lifetime of too much stuff. But losing my office, I had a full office with, you know, 8 bookshelves. So all my books were in my office. So that was a big miss. But that's what really kind of retired me from active duty there. So I moved to Michigan. And I've done consulting work ever since.
Well, you were in Bangladesh, 3 months ago? And
in October, went to Bangladesh for...
And you were in India. I'm just trying to think of in the last year and a half.
those were very interesting, cool jobs. The Bangladesh was helping with installation work and job descriptions and stuff like that on Dalfit direct to screen machines. They're Waxjet and the Brown Firefly.
Which you know, I mean, the Dalton you know, obviously, but the Brown,
Yeah,
I mean, you and I talked about it.
Road. They've sent me on quite a few little jaunts. Richard, will you go down to this place and do a service call on these guys? So
right,
they're certainly friends of mine, John and Mark Deal.
What people probably don't know, well, they probably know maybe that you're a member of the Academy of Digital and Screen Technology.
Year 2000, you're the one who got me in, and I know that Ben and Dave said, "Why aren't you in the Academy?" And I sort of went, "Well, I guess I could, but you know." And they sort of edged me on. I think I called you and said, "How do I get in?" And I think you were.
Yeah. Somebody asked to, write the letter, and I did that. And although who knows what's going to happen with that with Printing United? We have our yearly dinner.
It's the SGIA is just going right down.
Yeah.
You can ship.
Not the same. Not the same at all.
The magazine is now the Printing United Journal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not giving up the ship, but I'm still very, 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 very angry about how all the technical articles that had been accumulated by Mike Ukena when he was in charge of the articles and the website, they were all posted and stuff that you could bank on. It's all gone now.
It's all gone. Oh, we lost it. Oh, maybe we'll get it back.
No backup?
Yeah.
A $200.
When SGIA changed to a new website, I think the guys that put up the new website thought, "Who needs this old crap?" So it's gone.
And nobody seems to be upset about it.
I know it really bothers you, and it should, because what people don't know about you also is you're the keeper of the archives. If somebody wants a magazine that's 20 years old or an article or something, they call Greaves. Greaves has, I don't know whether you have it at Gina's house or you have it in your storage rooms or scanned, because you scan stuff like a fanatic.
I mean, I've got them in boxes. I've got nothing.
So you are known as the keeper of the archives.
For years, Marcy Kinter, don't tell me, has been sending me the old screen printing magazines from SGIA.
Before they throw them away.
My great story about what really got me started in the collecting is that in 1988, I'm in Australia, and I'm with Lindsay Rotherham and Tom O'Connor, who hired me to come down there and work with his company, and he introduced me to Lindsay, and who was passed on. But we're touring the Melbourne Technical Training Institute or whatever, and it's on a Saturday or something like that because they're dark. But they're showing me because I was, I don't remember what, it's a long, long, long time ago. But Lindsay says something like, "Let me just go get something." And he leaves. And so I'm waiting. And a man walks through with 3 bundles. He puts them down because he's got to unlock the door. And I look down, and what are they? They're screen printing magazines with string wrapped around them. And we're talking stacks. And they're old. And I'm doing, "Oh, what are you going to do with those?" I said, "Oh, taking them out to the incinerator." "Can I have them?" "Yeah, sure, if you want." I said, "Fine." And I tell Tom O'Connor, "Let's get these out to the car quick before somebody catches me." And that stack, it's not in this room anymore, but it was easily 18 inches to 2 feet, which, it wasn't that difficult to bring back on an airplane back in 1988. I know that when I went to Australia the first time in 88, I took 2 cases of Mountain Dew with me because I wasn't certain that I'd be able to get the soda there. And so it was really no problem to bring back those magazines. Just didn't cost that much to fly with extra tonnage of stuff.
You just tipped the guy at the curb more money way back.
I read another in Screen Printing Magazine. A guy named Ray Colo wrote a letter to the editor and said something like, "Hey, if anybody wants them, I've got a bunch of back issues I want to get rid of." And I found him as fast as I possibly could, and he shipped them to me. And so that's why my collection is called the Ray Colo and the Melbourne Technical College. Can you hear the cops going by?
I can. Yeah, I can hear them. Yeah.
So
You know if it's me or you.
I live on the main street of Wyandotte. And so those two guys gave me the biggest start. Plus that when you see the scans, some of them are scans of magazines with Don Newman's name on them, M&R names on them. You know, wherever I worked, some of the extra magazines got into my collection. And
so if you're looking for a back issue,
if you're looking for a back issue, I love it.
Greaves is the
what
guy.
I really need to do is get back to scanning more of that stuff. I've lost the company that used to cut them for me. A little printing company. It took me a long time before anybody would do it for me. I said, "Can you just cut the bindings off?" Because when I was at Ulano, I just go down to the film room and Oscar would cut off all the bindings, with the big guillotine. Yeah, gee, it'll take me exactly 10 seconds.
Yeah,
it was this gigantic machine. He'd line it up. His tongue would come out.
Those are scary as hell. Those are so scary. 2 buttons so you don't get your hand in the way.
Yep. Left and right. Yeah.
Hey, we need to wrap this up. Any famous last words?
Screen printing has been very, very good to me.
It's been your life.
I think it's Mark Twain who said, despite the rumors, I am not dead. That I know that, have phone will travel. If I proved anything in the trips that I've taken to India in 2017 and Bangladesh, those are the furthest trips away. I love answering questions.
You do. So you do it great. I think after your stroke, you fell off the horse a little bit.
Not being in the magazines, and me not really having enough of a web presence. Mm-hmm. So shouldn't I be doing more Instagram marketing and stuff like that? Yes, I should.
Yeah,
I should because I'm just.
But you're going to. You're going to.
Yeah. Okay.
One day. Hey, Mr. Greaves, we'll do show number 2, and I'll tell my my life story on show number 2. This has been fun. I thought I knew all your stories. Well, because you and I have been hanging out for a long time.
I've been collecting the dossier on you. It's right here.
That's it. Huh? There's no incriminating videos in there, are there?
No, not videos.
Yeah, who knows?
So much of the early work with dogs was before the internet.
Wow, dogs! I was making a list here. Dogs. I forgot about dogs, man.
Pat, that's how you got into the business with your dog prints.
Pat did.
That's what I thought. That's what I remember.
Yeah, Pat did that, and that's another story for another day.
Dog transfers. Okay.
All right, guys. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Hope you got some little history. We dropped some names you've never heard of, but you should have heard of. But some of these guys have come and gone. Like Terry Kaiserman, who would have known? Because Terry doesn't go to the shows, doesn't write articles. He's in the different industry, and he developed maybe he invented the electric ink, the conductive inks, and stuff. Yep. Terry's done. Guys like that never get to play, never get the recognition, that are out there, and so hopefully we can dig them up. Anyway, all right, got to run. Thank you, Mr. Greaves. Good talking to you.
We're not going to do an ad.
Well, yes, you do your ad. I don't have a prop. I'll find a prop.
I should have had the prop ready, but
I'll flap a graphic.
Think of the history of screen printing, the actual real book, the history of screen printing. Everybody should have a copy of that, written by the great Guido Lingweiler.
And they order through you. We'll put up how they order.
You should order by going to Squeegeeville, which is the best place to go to squeegeeville.com.
Aren't you still the fulfillment house in the U.S.?
Oh, yes. I'll be the one that's shipping it.
You have
in my warehouse.
How many skids of these books do you have in your storage room?
Well, there's $60,000 worth of them.
We're going to pump that thing.
So they belong to Guido. They don't belong to me. I'm strictly the United States distributor. Right. They used to be distributed by Signs of the Times.
Mark
Kissane.
Kissling.
Kissel.
Yeah. I had to think of his name for a minute. So anyway,
Mark.
My sponsorship is tbiznetwork.com. Just check me out, and we'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching our show. Adios.